Well, yeah, I think we can kind of kick it off for tonight. Welcome everyone. Thanks for being here on your Friday night, 1st of November slash Saturday morning for our friends calling in from the other side of the Pacific. Uh, so we're happy to be back. We were on a little bit of a pause with the Living Earth Youth Dialogues. This is our first one, I think, since August. Is that right? Um, I know Vivian's got some new initiatives in the works too. So I'll give her a second to talk about those briefly. But yeah, I wanted to thank the Living Earth Movement, Cobb Institute, Institute for Postmodern Development of China, for supporting our events here. And I'm excited to introduce my friend Oliver shortly. But yeah, before that, Vivian, please tell us these exciting things you have coming up.
Yes, well, thank you, Jared. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, and many of your faces. Lovely to see you. Um, yeah, as many of you know, that we are taking a little break this winter or summer winter, because we had a really interesting and wonderful Claremont Eco Forum this year, and then since the Eco Forum, we have started developing with friends we met at the forum sister communities that can be coming along with this one, as we're saying, the communities of communities. And we're happy to announce that there will be two sister communities are coming up and aligning with this Leaving Earth Youth Dialogue. And one community is dedicated for working with educators and eco-educators or educators interested in learning about ecological civilizations and wanting to incorporate some of these new um, principles and worldviews into
Yeah.
the curriculum. And one other community will be a community dedicated for high school students and who are already developing wonderful projects under the ecological civilization worldview. And we will provide helps and assistance to them. And hopefully we will see many of them at our next year's Eco Forum. So these are all kind of working alongside with this one, but we're moving towards the same goal. And we hope to see you online. I'm gonna send the link in the chat room in a while. We hope to see you online and then also offline next year in LA at our Eco Forum. Thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, next year's Eco Forum is going to be even bigger, even more collaborative. So we're also going to be celebrating John Cobb's 100th birthday and the 10-year anniversary since the really significant 2015 Seizing an Alternative conference that really birthed a lot of important organizations in our broader network of relations, Pando Populus in the Los Angeles area, Institute for Ecological Civilization. So a lot of these same folks will be coming back, contributing to this event as well. And we just announced a call for papers for this eco conference, and we have 6 different tracks that we are kind of putting forward, 6 different topic areas. And anyone's welcome to submit. You don't need to be just some kind of PhD academic sort of folk. We certainly welcome activists, independent researchers, all sorts of different people who might have something important to contribute on these topics. So spread the word, submit something yourself maybe. And yeah, looking forward to it. I'll be out there, I'm sure, next year in Los Angeles in June. It'll be at yeah, the United Methodist Church there, which is the new home of the Claremont School of Theology. And yeah, should be a wonderful, wonderful event. So anyway, tonight we're back with the next Living Earth Youth Dialogue, and I'm really excited to introduce Oliver here, who I met, gosh, 2017 was it? Something like that. We met at an interfaith conference in at Colorado College a number of years ago, which was a really lovely event. And Now we've both found ourselves working in various research, nonprofit, academic type organizations and doing stuff on this topic of ecological civilization. So Oliver is at the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, and he's a research assistant there. And he's also personally responsible for creating this really great resource page on ecological civilization that the Yale Forum has put out. He was a student at Yale, got like linked up with Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm, and so hence the connection there. So, all right, Oliver, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jared, and thank you to everyone at the Youth Dialogues, Living with Youth Dialogues for having me today. Really grateful to be with you and to share some of the things that I'm interested in and I've been learning about over the past few months. Jared, would you be able to bring up the PowerPoint for me, please?
Will do.
Great. That's our yeah, we can yeah, start here. And then I'll just say some of the things that I'll be focusing on in my presentation today are the ideas of differentiated sentience of the more than human world, that is like the consciousness and sentience, aliveness, awareness of creatures and plants and fungi and all the things that are in the world that are not human but are make up this community with us. So that aspect of things, and also eco-spirituality, so the human response to the more than human consciousness, the way that we can engage with all of these things together. And so the Forum of Religion and Ecology is working on this project of gathering all these resources together to share them in a similar way that we created a page on the ecological civilizations. So that more details on that will probably be forthcoming. We're kind of in the earlier stages at the moment, but it's a very exciting project to be involved with. I'd like to start with a poem that I really enjoy. I wonder if I could get a couple of volunteers who might want to read a stanza.
I
It'll
would be
be right
happy
on
to
the
read one.
PowerPoint. Great. So we've got maybe two people. Lauren, like to.
Great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help.
So great. So maybe Jared and Lauren can switch off. There's two stanzas each. So if you want to, Jared, you can start, and Lauren, you can go second, and then Jared again, and then Lauren again. And so it'll be 2 pages of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Great. I go amongst trees and sit still. All my stirring becomes quiet. Around me, like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places, where I left them, asleep like cattle.
Then what is afraid of me comes and lives a while in my sight. What it fears in me leaves me, and the fear of me leaves it. It sings, and I hear its song.
Then what I am afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its songs.
After days of labor, mute in my consternations, I hear my song at last, and I sing it. As we sing, the day turns and the trees move.
Beautiful. Thank you both. This is
Welcome.
a poem that I really enjoy, and it kind of captures some of that energy, some of that the idea of going into nature and encountering something beyond ourselves that is somehow feels like a part of ourselves. So I hope to kind of integrate some poetry, some interactive elements, some discussion, maybe some like and begin actually with a quick guided exercise, a quick guided kind of almost meditation practice that we can engage in together, kind of eco-spiritual visualization. So if that sounds good to you, great. You're welcome to join along. And we can just go to the next slide here. And the next three slides will just be a couple of images that might be like fodder for the imagination. Um, I want I want I invite you to picture yourself in a serene place in the middle of nature. It could be the favorite place you've ever been, or maybe a new place. It could be the top of a mountain looking out on an expanse of trees. I took this picture from the top of East Rock Park in New Haven, Connecticut. It could be in a forest or in a desert or on a beach. And we can just maybe spend 10 seconds on the next one and next picture and land on the third one. Here's a desert, kind of open, empty space. And then one more picture. Here we go. This sort of a rainforest, wild area. But I'll invite you to close your eyes and just imagine yourself wherever your imagination takes you. As you're in this place, what is it that you see around you? What kind of human and non-human things? What kind of living and non-living things, beings populate the landscape? What's the weather like? Is it warm? Is it cold? What do you smell? Maybe the smell of the ocean, or the smell of the soil, or the smell of a campfire. Engaging our senses here. What is it that you hear? Maybe the lapping of water on the shoreline, or the sound of bird calls, or coyotes off in the distance. Maybe the falling sound of gentle rain. Turn your attention to imagining what you might hear in this place that you've chosen. Now imagining what living beings are in this place, the plants, animals, even the fungi and bacteria. See if you can imagine them and perceive them and even greeting them, saying hello, communicating in some way. If you're able to imagine communicating with even one of these living beings, could be a tree or a blade of grass, could be a mushroom or a bird or a lion. What do you want to say to this living being? And what do you imagine it wants to communicate back to you? Imagine yourself continuing this conversation for a minute or so, just opening your heart and expanding your compassion to this living being and receiving that compassion back. Knowing that this is a place you can return to anytime. I invite you to come back to our Zoom room together. And I want to open it up to a conversation. We might just go to the next slide and see what I have there. If not, yeah, we might go actually right back. Yeah, if you back button, yeah. I didn't put up the questions on the next slide, but we could have a little discussion maybe if anyone wants to share their experience of where did you go? Who did you communicate with? What did you talk about?
Went to northern Vermont, where a friend of mine has a lovely property, number of acres, hilly, woodsy, really old northern New England hilly forest, but a lot of ponds. There's farming that happens there. And yeah, I communicated with some of the vegetables in the garden. And but especially the moose. I saw a moose briefly there once, and yeah, the moose was an intriguing presence as this towering being in the ecosystem that suddenly appears. I don't know exactly where the moose lives in these woods in this area, but all of a sudden uh, was out the window once, and yeah, I don't know how to phrase the human moose communication in typical English language. But yes, I don't know. I got something of its nobility and stature, and but like a warmth as well. Uh,
That's great. Thanks. Thank you, Jared. I wanted to share in the chat. Lauren said, drinking from the wellspring water that we all share. Very wonderful image. Lauren, if you want to share more on that, I'd love to hear it, but absolutely no pressure.
Oh, sure. Well, I took Vivian and Mignon to visit a very special place. After the last Claremont Eco Forum, they were able to travel north, and we went to a place just outside of Mount Shasta that's called the Headwaters Outdoor School, which is open about 9 months out of the year to school groups and young adults for wilderness rites of passage. And this particular piece of wilderness has the most amazing well springs on it. There's just the water bubbling right up out of the ground. And I don't know how you test water, but Tim tells us that it was tested and the water is 500 years old or something like that. It's water that's coming from the glacier in Mount Shasta, seeping down into the earth and then bubbling up. And the water's from like 500 years ago. And it is just the most pure and vibrant place that I've ever been. It's just sitting in that area is nourishing on every level of my being. And it's like I feel like I'm in touch with every level of complexity of life when I'm standing there, from the minerals to the plants to the animals, the people, the spirits. Everything is so accessible, and it feels like the water is what ties us all together.
An incredible image. Thank you for sharing that, Lauren. Reminds me of the believe it's a Lakota phrase that I learned about during the time of the Standing Rock protests around the Dakota Access Pipeline. They were protecting the water, and they would say that this phrase "mini wachoni," which means water is life. Feels very like a universal truth that the water that we all share, right? It's wonderful. Well, would anyone else like to share an experience from this guided exercise? If not, we can move on, but I want to just give maybe one more person the opportunity if they'd like to. All right. Well, then maybe we could return to the PowerPoint. And go to the next slide. And we can, yeah, if you can click through it a couple of times, it'll give us a couple of things. So there is a research study from Billett and colleagues from 2023, and they just defined eco-spirituality as the appraisal and experience of nature's spiritual qualities. They also brought to light two additional themes that eco-spirituality often emphasizes in terms of connection to nature connection to nature, and in terms of humanity's inherent dependence on nature. That's part of it, as well as one's personal connection to nature. And the second is that eco-spirituality often imbues nature with these anthropomorphic qualities, especially mental qualities, these qualities that facilitate the appraisal of nature as a social entity with which one may have a connection. And of course, we want to be careful maybe about anthropomorphizing things, just assigning human qualities where they may not exist, but to maybe recognizing qualities that we may only understand humans to have, but falsely, that other things may have human qualities or qualities that we only ascribe to humans, but that's because of our limited understanding, and we're discovering more and more about the sentience and the intelligence of other beings as time goes on and science becomes more and more attuned to this kind of thing. And it's, of course, as well, knowledge that indigenous cultures have often taken for granted as well, just that we can communicate with with the plants and animals around us. Um, let's see. So yeah, the researchers said that these two themes aren't necessarily um, required for something to be eco-spiritual, nor is spirituality necessarily a component of these themes. Um, but um, bringing the two together is a unique and powerful thing. And yeah, we can go to the next slide. They contrast it to the instrumental view of nature that um, views nature as a means of serving human flourishing and uses the tools of economic rationality to determine the conditions for which the exploitation of nature is justifiable. So these things that they're offering here, that's kind of the default mode that our society uses to engage with nature, and something that the eco-spiritual can awaken us to its inadequacy, really, the world as a mechanism, as an instrument, as something that is only meant for humans. And um, they say in their study that it is rational, even acceptable, to exploit nature if the value provided through its preservation is outweighed by the value provided through its consumption. Um, that's according to the instrumental view. They also write that this kind of cost-benefit analysis is inconsistent with a spiritual view of nature. When nature is viewed as having an intrinsic sacred and therefore moral value, decisions about its preservation or exploitation rather, are not justified based on strictly rational cost-benefit analysis, but instead subject to fundamental beliefs about right and wrong. We can go over to the next slide. Eco-spirituality and health. So a couple other researchers came out with a study in 2024 linking eco-spirituality to health outcomes. They say that first, that the indigenous way of life often is more in tune with eco-spiritual elements, and that eco-spirituality leads to healthier environment, which directly relates to health in the human. Um, so let's see what's next. Yeah, so got some discussion questions of, what eco-spiritual experiences have you had in your life? Um, how do you feel when you're immersed in nature or when you engage with nature? And how do you want to engage with nature going forward? So if anyone would like to share, on this, yeah.
I put the questions in the Zoom chat for reference too
Great,
while we're face to face here.
great. And these practice, it could be anything from going for walks in the woods, to swimming in the ocean, doing meditation outside and listening to the birds. Eco-spirituality, is a word with a lot of syllables, so we might assume that it's very complicated, but can be just as simple as experience and being part of something. Vivian.
Yeah, I could share a lot, but simply
Good.
at this moment, I'm more curious about me, the extended me when I'm in the vast nature. How I used to live and work in the mountains in a very high altitude mountains, and their mountains are so vast, so high, And me, it's so very tiny. And in the worldview of the local people, the mountains are gods, and they have names and stories. The mountain in between the mountains, and they are brothers and sisters. So just immersed myself in that worldview of the mountains, and I wonder, where do I stand in their worldview? I tend to be more curious about how am I perceived in the eyes of birds and trees and plants and mountains, and how are they trying to communicate us, and then how limited my word is, that I oftentimes don't, I'm not able to read what are they trying to say. So I'm curious to learn more about it too. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vivian. Yeah, mountains are such huge and ancient um, aspects of our world. And what would it be like to imagine ourselves through the eyes of a mountain? What could how do mountains perceive us? We can imagine that. How do we even communicate with a mountain? Imagine communicating with a mountain. Beautiful. Thank you.
One experience I recall as a teenager was, yeah, going on a walk through my neighborhood during a really thick snowstorm, and walking very slowly, and yeah, just being in a totally different state of consciousness, because I was in a very different state of the environment, of someplace that was very familiar to me, but with this intense snow cover, so quiet, because of the like deadening of sound that can be created from all the snow, and just kind of meandering in a sort of state of awe in a way, but in a very subdued, relaxed sort of sense. So, yeah, this wasn't an experience that really included other living beings in a sort of foregrounded way, but more so the kind of climactic aspect of ecology. Yeah, there's definitely something special, some unique experiences about different weather phenomenon, maybe different eco-spiritualities associated with different kinds of weather we experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jared. Like imagining, well, ourselves, it feels like we're in a different world if we're in a rainstorm or a snowstorm or a weather event that completely changes our perception of the world around us. And I think you both mentioned uh, either awe or wonder. And I've got this book here by Dacher Keltner. Oh, that's a little blurry, right? Because I've got the blur mode on. But he's written a book on awe, and we're coming to understand how important awe is for spirituality, for how important awe and wonder are for transformative consciousness, for um, really kind of entering into this um, different kind of relationship to the world around us. Lauren, I see you've got a hand raised. Yeah, Lauren, if you do if you
Yeah,
yeah, go
there we
ahead.
go. There we go. Okay, I'm trying to fix my camera too. I have to
Okay.
turn on a light because it's dark here. It's
Oh,
nighttime
there you
here.
are. Nice to see
Hi.
you.
So, um, have you all heard about the research of the mother trees?
I,
So, when I was, let's see, 17, I lived in an old growth forest and I lived there for 5 years. And I never, of course, that research on the mother trees didn't come out for another 15 years, I think. Um, but it definitely had that experience of the And I don't really have that much of an experience in just a new growth forest, but because I had that access for such a long extended time to the old growth forest, you could feel the community of the trees, and you could feel how they were a collective. And I was able to, just wander that area and just get to know the whole region. And I found all the mother trees, and just, yeah, they had a like a magnetic pull to them. They were easy to find. Um, I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like how so many mandalas are based in concentric circles. It's almost like you could feel the network of the forests in these concentric circles, and so it was very easy to find the mother trees. And they're huge, they're like it take 6 people reaching your arms around to stand around them. Yeah, it was a beautiful experience. And a lot of my friends laugh and they say that I have a PhD from the forest because living there for that extended amount of time, I can definitely say it repatterned my mind to be so immersed in a holistic community, right? An old growth forest that hadn't been touched for, uh, well, ever, really. It had never been, you know, um, really, touched by human hands. So it was an amazing experience to live there. And I still say that the trees are my best teachers because it's so easy for me to connect with trees as a living being after living in that community for so long. Thanks.
Thank you, Lauren, for passing on the wisdom of your tree professors. And how wonderful, grateful that you had that experience of getting to spend so much time in the old growth forest, and learning from those mother trees. Um, yeah, hope that our forests today are given or we're wise enough to care for our forests enough to allow for new mother trees to generate and create new families, because so much has been lost. Um, yeah, so much work to preserve what's left and nurture it. Wonderful, thank you. I see Jay as well, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I taught eco-theology to college students for many years. And the first day I would ask people, are you a water person or a plant person or a mountain person or a desert person or a forest person or several of those or a star person or an ocean person? And it would be to try to find where they had had an experience of closeness, of intimacy with the more than human world. And I really found that many people were people were of different sorts there. And it had a bit to do with childhood. It had a bit to do with early childhood experience, where there's something when you were young where you were touched by the more than human world. For my part, Oliver, I was touched by animals. And part of that was pets at home, and part of it was animals in the wild. And that includes fish, because I fished. And what the spirituality there was I don't think the word awe, I mean, there was awe, there was wonder, but it was a sense of kinship, a sense of kinship, that here was another being beautiful, different from me, that wanted to live, that also yearned to live. And I don't think that's anthropomorphism. I think it's pretty obvious. If something runs away from you, it's trying to live. And so I just want to put in a word for multiple kinds of eco-spirituality, but also a word for kinship with animals as an important form of eco-spirituality. Oliver, when you first had us do that meditation, I was almost embarrassed with the image that I wrestled with. I think I was, because my image was of a catfish. And I don't know if you know what a catfish is. It's a kind of a big fish that has whiskers and kind of looks like a cat. And when I was a boy, my father would take me fishing, and I caught a catfish. And at that time, I was proud of that, but I also knew that that fish wanted to live,
Mm.
and that fish suffered, and I was responsible for that. So I tried to make amends to that fish. My meditation was asking that fish, I'm sorry,
Mm.
I'm sorry. And who knows how that catfish responded, but I do feel like I sensed a bit of, it's okay. I eat too. I eat too. And so, anyway, a word for fish, a word for kinship is a form of spirituality.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. Um, yeah, powerful communication with you know, a being, that, I guess one thought that came to me was that traditional cultures will honor the lives of the animals that they hunt or fish and for food, and, you know, communicate with them, and, and say thank you, and, this, we don't take the taking of your life lightly. And so it seems like a natural human response, and something to yeah, yeah, appreciate you sharing that. Especially bringing into the conversation the idea of kinship, and that we're all literally part of one big sort of evolutionary genetic family. Um, but also we're all part of a sort of ecological family together. We're all interdependent. And yeah,
So you're kind of, when you go fishing, you're fishing for your cousin. I
yeah,
mean, we really are kin.
right,
They really, we are family.
right. Yeah, a wild thing to think about. Jared, is there something you wanted to chime in at as well?
Yeah, I wanted to get to your subsequent questions here about how do you feel when you're immersed in nature or when you engage with nature? And what's really kind of come out for me in our discussion so far is maybe you feel kind of the whole gamut of possible experiences, emotions. I mean, there's awe, of course. There's these experiences of reverence and yeah, the communing with beauty, but there can be guilt and sorrow too, and terror. We want to live as well, and some of these beings, I don't want to be too closely physically related to at all times. So I feel like I've often seen a very kind of romanticized, lovey-dovey form of eco-spirituality popularized, but
Mm.
yeah, how can we have an eco-spirituality that is inclusive of a kind of wider range of different relational experiences with nature and
Right.
other creatures? Mhm.
right? Not all creatures are nice to one another, you know. It's a violent world as well, and a terrifying world as well. And we are not escaping that by um, escaping those aspects of humanity when we go into nature. Um, but but true, how to integrate those things wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vivian.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that too, that one of the most powerful experience from the nature I've received was to see in the Tibetan mountains in the early spring when the grass is not grown and the weather is still cold and the little yaks are dying because if they couldn't survive that weather, they won't be able to survive later in life. So they naturally die, and then the contour will come and gather for a feast. Um, and this happened well, quite often right next to our village. And we walk with the herders, we walk around and we see this happening, and they, in human, observe that and not interacting with that. And I would ask, why don't we, save that yak and, chase away the contour? And the herdsman would say, then you're interfering with the natural circle. And that's but then the contour are seen as very sacred, sacred birds in the eyes of Tibetans. But I believe in many indigenous communities, contours are very sacred because they don't kill. They only feast on already dead animals, and so they're seen as very, very special and sacred. And that's a moment of life and death, and integrity, that as a lessons that I've received from the mountain. And one of the to answer or to echo what Jerry just say, and that's it's not always beautiful and lovey-dovey, and there's things about very deep and dark topics. And I think what nature works for me is as a mirror. And it really pulls me back into seeing myself. If I see it as something external, that I'm observing it, and then I'm not really letting it impacting me. And then if it gave me the mirror that let me see the capacity of emotions of myself, and that's where I think the teaching will take place. The dark side of myself, the vulnerable side of myself, the powerful and the bright side of myself, they're all there. This vast capacity, how diverse a nature is, and how capable that we as a human are in it. So that perhaps that's the thing, if we anthropomorphically see it as beautiful and harsh, and it is truly it is self. That's why it's nature as itself. So
Mm.
thank you.
Oh, thanks, Vivian. Yeah, I'm yeah, I'm loving all of these things that we're talking about, and nature as a mirror, as teaching us about ourselves. It's so I really resonate with that. Yeah, and also the grief of the that is it's like we often try to escape grief, right? But it's such a important part of the cycle of life and death. And yeah, it's so sad to think about all those yaks that are dying, and think about, and to let that happen, just to let it be, okay, we can let this be. Um, Very powerful. Thank you. Um, Loving this conversation, and would like to continue to go deeper as we continue with the presentation. So I'll just return to that. Um, and let's see what we got next. Oh yeah, but before we go into this, I'll just say I don't think I necessarily put it in the PowerPoint, but I have been reading the work of Bill Plotkin, who has written books called Soulcraft and Nature in the Human Soul. That was part of the title of my presentation, in the human soul. And he has a he has a view of eco philosophy, eco psychology that I would describe as eco spiritual. Really, and I had the opportunity to attend Animus. His organization is Animus Valley Institute. I had an opportunity to attend a intensive with them a few weeks ago, and we engaged in these practices. Like we'd go on wanders through the woods, through nature, and we were invited to communicate, to talk with the trees and the animals, um, to have conversations and to listen and to awaken the animal parts of ourselves and really kind of come alive to being a part of all of this and not being separate, like we're often sort of subconsciously maybe believing that we are. And this involves the imagination, it involves the intuition, the intuitive ways of knowing that go beyond the purely rational, and the sort of the ways of thinking and engaging that we do in our everyday. Um, but I believe intrinsic to who we are as human beings. So um, let's let's just go through this like maybe one at a time. Different eco-spiritual practices that remind us we're immersed within a living earth community of sentient beings. So forest bathing being one. This is a book about forest bathing, where this, Japanese practice of just mindfully, intentionally going for walks in nature and in the wild to like as a practice of spiritual hygiene, bathing in the forest, not literally bathing, but bathing our minds and our spirits in the forest environment. We can go to the next one. Let's see. There's a book by Llewellyn Vaughan Lee on spiritual practices. It's got spiritual ecology. Um, it's another resource. We can keep going here. Yeah, another book here, The Sustainable Soul. So, these are all things that we're trying to just gather and give people opportunities to learn about. So, um, if you're looking to do some further, like, you know, diving into, you can search eco spiritual practices on Google, find some of these books. Maybe you'll find something else. Meditation, some natural meditation. So it's really about opening up our perception, opening up our consciousness to the consciousness that is around us, having an interactive um, experience. So yeah, let's continue on. The next part of this is differentiated sentience. So um, just starting out, what is sentience? Lori Marino, who's an expert on dolphins, I believe, um, I'll just read this quote. She talks about sentience as the depth of awareness an individual possesses about himself or herself and others, or themselves and others. There appear to be three related but separable general domains of sentience. There's self-awareness, metacognition, and theory of mind. To date, evidence shows that these three capacities are found in non-human animals, including primates, dolphins, dogs, rodents, and corvids. It's like different types of ravens and crows. These findings are evidence of the deep psychological continuity that exists across the animal kingdom. So this was in 2010. There's lots of debates within the scientific community in terms of what sentience entails, what living beings are sentient, what animals are sentient. But some themes being awareness, cognition, capacity to feel, intelligence, and if, like trying to use scientific methods to prove it kind of, rather than innocent until proven guilty, it's like non-sentient until proven sentient, rather than starting with a standpoint of sentient until proven non-sentient. Um, we're almost going backwards here, but like, we're coming from a people often say like a worldview coming from Descartes or the Enlightenment that assumes the earth is mechanical, assumes other living beings as sort of automatons, as mechanisms. And I think it's probably the general consensus amongst this circle, and others like it, that we're trying to get away from that and have more of an expansive view. So we'll just, yeah, go to the next slide here. See what we got here. Oh yeah. So I'm working with the Forum on Religion and Ecology, and they had Mary, Evelyn, and John, who are the directors. They helped to organize this conference in 2018 called Living Earth: New Ways of Being and Knowing. It gathered scholars together who are focused on various forms of non-human sentience. And the scholars eventually produced this book, Living Earth Community: Multiple Ways of Being and Knowing, which is available for free online for anyone who's interested to read it. Um, Wonderful reflections and resources in there. Um, so just, yeah, and we can continue on here. Here's some quotes from Mary Evelyn on differentiated sentience. She's talking about literature is on the differentiated sentience of nature is popular right now. We don't want to think of this as a dead world that we can destroy with impunity. Matter is living, changing, and communicating. That's what's so amazing. And then she talks about certain kinds of sentience in the more than human world, and how a better understanding of the dynamic, complex systems of nature is something that can generate awe, wonder, and hope, even a possibility that we can actually be aligned with and assist these systems. So as we come into a more conscious understanding of the world around us, we can uh, be invited into it and into this dynamic, complex system. Um, yeah. Uh, Next, so we'll start with bacteria. The most basic form of life, almost. Bringing into conversation Professor Bonnie Bassler from Princeton University, who's one of the most prominent researchers and communicators about a phenomenon called quorum sensing, which is a form of bacterial communication, um, where autoinducers, basically chemical signals that bacteria release into the extracellular space in between, when bacteria often live in colonies called biofilms, and they communicate with one another through these autoinducer chemical signals. And so when the other bacteria that receive this signal, kind of like a neuron picking up on a neurotransmitter, when the bacteria detect these signals, they will alter their gene expression. So one example of this is photoluminescence, bioluminescence. There's the earliest example of this being discovered was these scientists realizing that the bacteria would alter their gene expression all at once to light up and create a light in the deep ocean. So these bacteria can regulate their collective physiology so that they're all able to adapt to a stimulus as a colony. And whether or not that is sentience is perhaps up for debate, but it's certainly a method of communication that can certainly influence the way that we see the world. We can go to the next slide here. So forest sentience. Suzanne Simard, the author of Finding the Mother Tree, who, one of our group members has brought up the mother tree and mother trees. And so Suzanne Simard is the preeminent researcher who kind of discovered that phenomenon. And we'll get into that in a bit, but also Diana Beresford Kroger, um, She's written a book called Our Green Heart, The Soul and Science of Forests. Peter Wohlleben, The Hidden Life of Trees. Um, and Eduardo Cohn wrote a book, How Forests Think Toward an Anthropology Beyond the Human. So all these folks are really prominent and wonderful communicators on the sentience of forests and trees. So just getting into Suzanne Simard a little bit, she researched the underground network of forests between the fungi and roots for folks who aren't necessarily aware of her work. So fungi and roots are combined in these networks called mycorrhizae. I believe I'm saying that right. If not, we'll figure it out. But she used these carbon isotopes to trace the flow of the sharing of carbon between individual trees and discovered that birch trees and Douglas fir trees will share carbon between themselves. And birch trees receive extra carbon from Douglas firs when the birch trees lose their leaves, and birch trees supply carbon to Douglas firs when they're in their shade. So they keep each other alive. They keep the forest alive through their mutual interdependence here. And the fungi are the methods by which these carbon molecules are transferred. She also identified mother trees. She called them mother trees, largest trees in the forest that act as central hubs for these mycorrhizal networks. They support seedlings with fungi and nutrients, and she did research discovering that Douglas firs will provide carbon to baby Douglas firs, to little saplings with preference to baby firs related to that specific fir tree. So her book is Finding the Mother Tree, where she describes this phenomenon of the interdependence and communication within forest ecologies, with the lesson that biodiversity is an asset in forest, and monoculture forests don't get to benefit from these intergenerational, when we grow forests for wood, and all the trees are the same age, they don't benefit from the mother tree phenomenon. We can go on to the next slide. Diane Beresford Kroger is another example. Her life's work at this point is the sacred work of reforestation. Her life story is very interesting. She grew up in Ireland, and she tells the story of being raised by, I believe, one of her grandparents who, passed on some, indigenous Irish Druidic knowledge of plants and nature. And she was given the mission of bringing this knowledge to future generations. So currently, she's advocating for what she calls a bioplan of ordinary people replanting the global forest. So she's inviting us into the eco-spiritual work of nurturing the ecosystem, of reforesting the world. Before we go on to animal sentience, I wonder if anyone wants to say anything on forest communication, anything that has struck them so far about that. Jay shared in the chat, in philosophy today, one powerful advocate of the idea that sentience or feeling is everywhere is the philosopher Alfred North Whitehead. His followers call it pan-experientialism, the notion that experience goes all the way down into the depths of matter and out into the expanses of galaxies. Gives a link to the page Open Horizons on pan-experientialism. Thanks, Jay. I'll have to look at that later. But yeah, I believe Lauren Elizabeth shared a little bit about her experience with the wisdom of the forest. And if anyone else has had experience or thoughts on that, yeah. Then,
Forest Bathing was the book that came to mind.
mhm.
I was the second youngest of five siblings, and our father passed away when I was 7. And our favorite place to go, and still my favorite place in life, was several hundred acres where he'd been raised in the forest by his grandparents. And I never had the experience that Warren shared of 5 years. We'd get 2 or 3 weeks at a time, but at the ages of preteen, we were free to wander through hundreds of acres of woods. And we had to walk about 3/4 of a mile through the pastures and some the barn and the ponds to get to the forest. And I always felt such a sense of joy and safety as soon as I walked into the forest. It's like I was bathed. I had never heard what Jay just wrote in the chat, but as you read it, I realized I experienced that was the essence of being in that one with all of nature. I mean, it was just a holy, sacred experience as children. And it was indescribable, but when we would take our friends there for a week or two in the summer, they would tell all of our other friends. So we were like constantly bringing our friends to experience nature, and it just I hadn't enjoyed that legacy experience for a very long time. So thank you all for this opportunity, and it was rich.
What a wonderful childhood memory and thing that
Again,
lives with you to this day. I'm sure, I can hear it in the way you tell that story. Um, yeah, I'm certainly blessed to have been growing up and having outdoor experiences. Grew up in the woodlands north of Boston and had a little backyard with some lot of woods and going camping growing up and just yeah, feeling all the freedom that comes with being a part of that kind of landscape, um, and being in relationship to it. Jay, would you like to chime in?
I'd like to ask you, so you
Yeah.
grew up just close to Austin?
Boston.
Boston, okay. Well,
Yeah.
good. Uh, I have a question, Oliver. Um, I know some people, and I'm not among them, who will talk about forests and trees as exchanging information, but they will avoid saying that there's something like communication occurring. They don't want to say that there's an exchange of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
There's only an exchange of abstract bits of information.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of that way of thinking is indebted, I think, to computers. It's kind of imagining a forest on the analogy of a computer in which there's an exchange of information, but you may not imagine an exchange of feeling. But I'm pretty skeptical of that. I'm actually skeptical of that even on computers. But on 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 force, do you ever run into that yourself where people will say, "Oh yes, they interact and there's an exchange of information, but there's nothing like sentience there." Again, I don't believe that, but I wondered if you do. Not that you believe it, but do you ever run into people who think that way?
Well, I think it's probably more common than not that people would think that way. Certainly Suzanne Simard would say that the probably much of the scientific community, particularly when she was just coming out with this research, gave her a lot of pushback and continues to this day as to like just not being able to like really are willing to accept like that anything that's being communicated is beyond maybe a mechanical process, that there's nothing in terms of sentience being really expressed here, and even parts of myself, there's some skepticism I can admit, just like, I wonder, are trees really like, you know intelligent? Like, how can we understand that? But um I would prefer to live in a world where they are. I we've got some things in the chat here. Oh yeah, because I fortunately only unilingual, but I believe this is a question.
I was calling if any friends from China want to share their experience with the forest in Chinese.
Yeah, sure. And then we've got a link from Charles.
well, that's from the listening field. Danalia Costella is part of a international community of individuals who communicate with trees and bodies of water and
Hmm.
mountains and rocks, and just beautiful messages and wisdom being captured from conversations that they're having. And that's one of the major homepages.
Cool. Thank you, Charles. Lauren, you're up next.
I was just going to add to what you were saying about um, the communication with nature. And I think that this is why process philosophy is so important right now in this time of when we need to reconnect with nature. Because there's some very just essential elements in process philosophy, and I think it really helps us shift our perception. First of all, to get out of binary thinking of, it's either me or other. But the concept of levels of complexity. Uh, I mean, if that concept could be passed on in all forms of education, everyone would feel so much more connected. It's the mechanistic binary thinking that's really cutting us off
Mhm.
because nature is so complex. And if we try to see it mechanistically, then I think a lot of people then feel afraid of nature. They feel overwhelmed because it's an other.
Mhm.
But when there's a basic sense of levels of complexity, then our mind can then grasp all the patterns of nature, even if we don't necessarily understand what we're seeing. We can
Mhm.
still recognize that it's nature's patterns, right? That there's communities within communities with communities, and that there's this, like I was sharing about my experience of living in an old growth forest, like we could see it's different groves and different micro ecosystems, yeah, where it was a river canyon or a pond or the mountaintops, right? And you could see all the different plants and the different animals that lived in those different areas, and they all had adapted to different functions, and they were all living together and working together. And being able to express that process philosophy gives us so much language to be able to articulate it. That's the word I'm looking for. To be able to articulate these deep intuitive patterns of nature.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren, and thanks for reminding us of we've got different options in terms of how we use philosophy and worldview to as our baseline, and process philosophy has a lot to offer. So thank you. How are we doing on time? We just wanted to maybe wrap up by 10:30, or it's 10:30 my time, but I don't know. Yeah, on the 30 mark.
We're always pretty loose with this. We can definitely go over a little bit.
Sure.
Not gonna
Well,
cut you off right at the half hour.
sure. Yeah. No, I've been really enjoying the conversation with everybody being able to contribute, and so I've tried to honor that and not necessarily try to rush it. So um, I'm glad that things are going as they have been. Um, yeah, gardening. There's nature in cities. Cities are full of beings, of nature.
Mhm.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
anyone
one
would
of our
like to.
earlier events was an interesting friend in China who was doing plant humanities, where he was taking people on eco walks, but in cities,
Yeah,
which was a really, really unique project.
yeah. Most cities have lots of trees, lots of parks, people walking their pets. All right. Well, we'll get into animals now. Just Try to be animals. So yeah, we can start with this. There's so much research that's been done, so much that's been published on the sentience of animals, non-human animals, that is, in recent decades. One of the forerunners of this kind of thing would be Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey, and in terms of like the great apes. And people will often say that X person is the Jane Goodall of XYZ. So we have a lot to owe to her and to the many people who are inspired by her, and in terms of living among animals and learning from them as equals, as colleagues. Diane Herzing is the research director of the Wild Dolphin Project. She's written a book, which I believe came out this year, on it called "Is Anyone Listening? What Animals Are Saying to Each Other and to Us." So she's written this book on animal communication, how they communicate with one another, with their kin, with neighboring species, and to us as well. And talks about non-human animals as colleagues instead of as research subjects. So they're both speakers and listeners and mutually curious beings. So in imploring us to listen to what they're saying. We can go to the next one. Mark Beckhoff. And we've got a foreword by Jane Goodall. So that's a very glowing endorsement. So he's written this book on the emotional lives of animals. Um, and originally published in 2007, but the 2024 version has a lot of updates based off of the recent research that's been done in recent decades. All sorts of different types of animals, their emotions, their sentience, their cognition, and how they express different emotions like joy, empathy, grief, embarrassment, anger, and even love. So just reflecting the surge in popular interest within this subject in previous decades. Um, The next book, we can go to the Peter Wohlleben, who wrote The Hidden Life of Trees. He has written this book, I believe it was written in 2018, on the inner life of animals, weaving the latest scientific research into how animals interact with the world. Um, so he's one of those unique folks who writes both about forests, trees, and about animals. So it's really, really cool stuff here. Love, grief, and compassion. So very similar to Mark Beckhoff's offering here, but um, another resource for us. We can go to the next one. So Carl Safina, this is a bit of an older book, I believe, but wrote a book called Beyond Words: What Animals Think and Feel. So another book bringing to light, bringing to the research, bring the research to the forefront of all these different researchers, looking into the consciousness of humans and non-humans and how similar they are. My octopus teacher. Yes, exactly, Charles. It's an incredible documentary. Thank you for sharing that in the chat. Um, octopi are so wonderfully intelligent and sentient, and wonderful research has been done in that area. I believe Cy Montgomery is a leading researcher in octopus cognition, octopus sentience. So um, yeah, thank you. We can go to the next one. Is Communicative Subjects by Paul, like the editors being Paul Waldo and Kimberly Patton. This is a book from the early 2000s that um, I just wanted to mention. The first comparative and interdisciplinary study of the conceptualization of animals in world religions. I recently got the chance to meet Paul. He's a wonderful person, and he's a good friend and collaborator with Mary Evelyn and John at the Forum. And yeah, so this book just is exploring animal consciousness, but from the lens of religion, um, which is a really important lens to look through. We can continue on. Yeah, so all of these books remind us of our place in the wider family of things. And there's so much more that we could get into and explore, such as my octopus teacher and that kind of thing. But it just maybe briefly for for if one or two people might want to share responding to these questions of what figures or research in the world of animal studies have captivated your imagination, and even what experiences with animals have opened your mind to the possibility of their sentience, and to that kind of thing. I think people often have experiences with their pets, right? These are the animals that we have the closest relationships to, as animals that we live with and depend on for emotional support, um, or that kind of thing. Having a little conversation in the chat too about gardening or special function, urban gardens, synchronizing ourselves with nature's rhythm, key to healing the urban industrial sense of time, at the same time building communities. Yeah. Urban gardening. Wonderful.
Impressive to me. I mean, we're learning more psychosomatically about human beings, and these different states our kind of nervous systems can get in, and what's maybe the best kind of healthy balance of different things, and how this isn't something that just is spurred totally internally as like a isolated individual, but are we co-regulate one another as human beings, at least in the healthier of contexts, but likewise with an animal. Certainly, yeah, the kind of stress relief and relaxation that can come with a cat, the kind of energizing and exciting moods that can come with a dog. I mean, and vice versa, certainly. These things definitely can play a very deep kind of somatic, psychosomatic role in hopefully living a little more healthily.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, our emotional regulation can be, we can co-regulate with other animals, even cats and dogs. And um Charles shared in the chat about Dr. Tasman Willie Barker's work. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that, Charles?
Oh, that would take hours. She's featured in the documentary The Lost Generation. She's an evolutionary biologist, the author of Teaming: What Ants Taught Us.
Hmm.
Fortune 100 companies will pay her $50,000 to teach them what she learned from nature and from animals, and they generate billions of dollars. So we finally suggested she started doing work for herself. And we were actually working with her today on a potential $10 million EPA grant to help restore and convey part of 86 acres of land in Borrego Springs to the Kumeyaay people. So
Amazing.
a lot of beautiful information on that website. San
Wow.
Diego County in California.
Amazing. Thank you. Um, Something to explore for all of us to learn a little bit more about her work. Thank you. Um, just in the interest of time, maybe we'll move back and continue on. Can we get a volunteer to read maybe the poem, or I'm happy to do it. We can, yeah, I'll read it. Why not? So this is a poem, one of my favorites, by Mary Oliver. I think poetry is a wonderfully experiential and imaginative way of opening to the mystery of the world around us. So you can just listen. You can just invite you to read along if you'd like, or close your eyes and listen. She writes, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clear blue air, clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. So just wanted to highlight that term, the family of things. What if anyone wants to just say if there was a phrase or something that stood out to them, just repeating the phrase or the word. Mm, yeah, anything that struck you while we listened to the poem.
The soft animal of your body. Evocative.
Mm, yeah.
It reminds me of Thomas Berry's words. The universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects.
Mm-hmm. Mm, yeah. Communion of subjects. The wild geese are calling out. Yeah, I think that, well, this poem for me just has a lot of things in it, right? The soft animal of our bodies. We're invited to remind ourselves that we are embodied creatures. We are animals, and we are part of it. We're part of it. Wonderful. So,
Well, in the United States these days, or the not so United States, with
mm,
the election coming up, the meanwhile, the world goes on seems pretty relevant.
yeah. Meanwhile, when as we're caught in our despairs and our personal dramas, which not to negate them at all, but just to know that they're part of something a lot bigger. All right. And I think that being, acknowledging that we're part of something a lot bigger can give us a sense of peace. All right, Jay, take care. Thanks for coming. I'll just finish. Just got a couple more things. Thich Nhat Hanh, Buddhist Buddhist monk and teacher and peace activist, has this poem on interbeing. He says, "You and me, you are me and I am you. Isn't it obvious that we inter are? You cultivate the flower in yourself so that I will be beautiful. I transform the garbage in myself so that you will not have to suffer. I support you, you support me. I am in this world to offer you peace. You are in this world to bring me joy." Um, so we can continue on from here. The living earth community calls us to interbeing. Thich Nhat Hanh says the interbeing is the understanding that nothing exists separately from anything else. We are all interconnected. By taking care of another person, you take care of yourself. By taking care of yourself, you take care of the other person. Happiness and safety are not individual matters. If I suffer, you suffer. If you are not safe, I am not safe. There's no way for me to be truly happy if you are suffering. If you can smile, I can smile too. The understanding of interbeing is very important. It helps us to remove the illusion of loneliness and transform the anger that comes from the feeling of separation. So although he's not doing it here, we can, I believe he would expand the notion of interbeing well beyond the human to include all sentient beings. We can continue on here is just this Buddhist idea of the blessing for all sentient beings, the four immeasurables. This we'll just close on this. As part of this traditional Tibetan Buddhist prayer. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the roots of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the roots of suffering. May they never be separated from the great joy, devoid of suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from passion, aggression, and prejudice. Um, and may we all continue to grow in love for our living earth community of sentient beings. Thank you all for being here, for your time. That concludes my presentation. Delighted that we had so much interaction and getting to know all of your stories. It was a really wonderful community that you have here. So thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Thank you.
you. That was fabulous.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Oliver. Yeah, a lot of information, but also, yeah, a lot of lovely discussion you brought to listen to. So wonderful to have you tonight. Any parting words? Is there anywhere people can follow up with either you or the Yale Forum on some of this material?
Um, Good question. In terms of communication or following up, you said
Yeah,
I could, well, I don't know if folks have questions or thoughts. We'll be trying to collect all this stuff and make it publicly available. I'll send that along to you when that comes out. It's probably going to be sometime in the spring.
wonderful.
But if folks want to reach out to me, you can give them my email. Given that this is sort of a public forum, I won't necessarily put my email out personally. I don't have the
Good.
institutional email at the moment,
Hmm. Hmm.
but yeah, I'm happy to continue conversation right now for a few minutes if folks want to continue on. But yeah, I'll respect whatever time that we're trying to keep. Thanks, Jared.
Hmm. Great. Yeah, any parting thoughts or questions from anyone else tonight?
I think Vivian, she's kind of shy, but she has her hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as many episodes of our programs actually attracting very like-minded and in a similar path, and we always ask our speaker to share a little bit of their personal journey, how you have come to this work that you are doing, and what are some of the difficulties, and yeah, how do you plan to move forward on this, and any suggestions to other young people, and especially in China that we're here, and if you have any thoughts for us.
Sure. Um, oh yeah, thanks for the encouragement. Echo Pineapple. Hello. And thank you, Vivian. Um, well, the full extent of my personal journey would I'm sure be enough to fill a subsequent presentation, but I'll spare you that. Um, I well, I've always been in love with the world around me. Having grown up, being able to go camping and hiking in the woods, my my dream from as a child was kind of to be someone like um, I'm blanking on his name now, but the guy who goes out and he's the British guy who narrates all the nature documentaries, David Attenborough, and just be able to like hang out with plants and animals and teach people about them. But then, of course, I uh, put childish dreams aside and got focused on the important things of doing well in school and getting a good education and continuing on with that. And most recently, found myself in divinity school. I had done some work in social services, serving folks who were experiencing homelessness, and got really interested in uh, social justice and spiritual accompaniment, and doing the kind of work of being present to people and in the world of suffering. Thanks, Charles. Great book title, he says. So um, anyway, coming to divinity school, I got a chance to take a class with Mary, Evelyn, and John on East Asian religions and ecology. It was my first year. It was during the pandemic, so it was on Zoom. But I still managed to feel kind of inspired and interested in it, even given the difficult circumstances. And uh, I studied anthropology as an undergrad and was always interested in the relationship within human societies and with humans and the world around them. So um, all that is to say, like to be able to integrate spirituality with nature, I'm still finding my way through it, how to do that in a way that is a career. There's not always a straightforward path. Um, I kind of explored the pathway of ministry in a church, um, but I feel also very much called to like the church of the wild. There's this whole
Oh,
like
the Church of the Wild. There's a great one.
More book titles.
yeah, well, not a phrase I originated, but it's there's people who are starting to think about church in terms of or getting together in the woods or in nature and communing with with the natural world. I don't have necessarily yeah, and this is I don't know, those are some threads. Those are some threads of my journey, and I'm sure there's much that I'm not even aware of or conscious of at the moment that has brought me to where I am. And I'm really like finding that um, I feel more like myself when I'm able to spend time in wild places. So I'm grateful for that. And I hope that that's the case for other folks. That's the advice I would give people is let let yourself learn from the forest and or the wherever you are. Let it guide you if you can. Um, but yeah, there's lots out there. Lots of great teachers to learn from. Cool. I'm very much still a learner myself. Yeah. Yeah. Very much. Not done.
Yeah, we had one whole event kind of dedicated to I don't know exactly how we framed it, but sort of yeah, finding career and life trajectory opportunities as young people who are ecologically
Mm.
interested and engaged, and that's definitely a worthwhile conversation. But yeah, there's not a not so many charted paths for these
Mhm.
things. So
That's probably good to do at least once a year, right?
yeah,
Because it really
yeah.
was helpful to everyone who attended.
hmm Yeah, we
You,
can put that one back on the docket.
yeah, let's do that. And then, I think one of the HR, I don't know, like a large world consultancy says that most of the work, most of the career and job that we really need in by 2030, 80% of them have not been even invented.
Mm.
And there's so much capacity, so much potential for new creation. And this, as we are moving along with, reconnecting with the nature, our inner and outer nature, and there a lot of new careers are popping up on this, just around me and my friends. I recently started learning the forest healing as a forest therapy as as a certificate programs in Chinese, and many
Oh.
friends around me are, quitting their job from a large corporate and learning something and then start practicing in new possibility. And as the earlier I announced in the Eco-Educator Network that we're starting, it's gathering around friends like this and to share that how can we becoming a learner, facilitator, and educator. Well, the names in the ecological civilization might change. We might not really have the word this traditional sense of teaching will be, facilitated collaborative learning in the forest, or like the image next to me, like this. And then what would the new career of teaching would be in the future? And then I really want to invite all of us to imagine what could this be, because there is needs, crucial. There's a lot of needs, there's a lot of value being created, and quote unquote wealth, abundance, they're waiting for us if we're able to and imagine it, have the imagination there to tap into that. Yeah, it's just a thought.
I'd like to invite us to schedule a session around living Earth, loving living Earth. I mean, there's so many quotes and phrases and the new initiatives that you've brought forth. I bet there are 101 ways that we could be a blessing and be of service just by having conversations around living Earth and loving living Earth.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm just looking at this link that you've placed in the chat here. Really cool.
Yeah, on the career. And also we need a lot of ecosystem restorers.
Yeah.
That's the there's too much of a breaking ecosystem that needs help to restore.
A lot of people have that job, Earth Destroyer. That's like one of the top employing professions right now, I think.
Exactly. And now in China, I recently learned it was a wonderful initiative by several large company foundation putting together a forest reforestation volunteer camp in a forest. They send their employees to that place, I think once in a while, and they will work on reforestation.
Very interesting. Very cool.
In China, it seems like there's a lot of as institutes on ecological civilization that are becoming, that are coming into existence and are quite robust, and opportunities for folks in China to get an education in that arena. It seems like given that it's a priority of the state,
Yeah.
that seems like a really promising path for those who are interested.
Well, I was thinking any one of the three of you, and Lauren too, the four of you. I mean, the world could be saved with the four of you collaborating and bringing forth your wisdom. I mean, you are the wave of the future. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you, right?
Thanks for the encouragement.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Charles.
Thank you for the hope.
All right, friends. It was a lovely event, as always. Thank you, Oliver, for sharing and for being with us late into your Friday evening here. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good to
Please
see you, Vivian.
Good to see you too, Jared. Come to our next event. See you soon.
Bye,
Thank
all.
you, Charles.
Thank you, Jared and Vivian and Oliver and Lauren and everyone. Let's not wait 3 months before we do this again.
All right. We'll try our best. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, me too.
We hope to have the first a students presentation this month. Not the set. Well, this will be the second. We'll have high school students from China, and we need some high school students from the US as well to share their projects. And yeah, we will create this sister events with them.
Well, Roger Briggs, who's working very closely with the University of Maine, asked me if youth were could we invite youth to these activities? So I don't know if he's working specifically with high school youth as well, but please keep me informed and I'll keep sharing the good news. I did publish a newsletter today. I had shared it earlier based on the earlier information, but the right people show up, and this certainly feels like it's been a very productive session. So thank
Yes.
you. Looking forward to adding it to the website when it comes up on Jared's to-do list.
Me
Do
as
you
well.
need help with the editing? Let me know, Jared.
Sweet. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get everything shared, and yeah, Oliver, I'll let you know when we have posted on YouTube and such. So looking forward to it.
Great, thanks.
And Charles, I will come back to you on the design
Yeah,
school institute.
yeah. I'm on our board and we're looking to get 10 or 20 million. So call me.
Great.
That is zero, and then we have it in China.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Good night,
Okay,
everyone.
well, good day and good night. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.